July 12, 1943. Just after dawn. Outside the dust-choked town of Gela, Sicily. The air still smells of cordite and salt water. Landing craft burn along the shoreline behind you, their twisted metal popping softly as flames chew through paint and rope. Somewhere inland, artillery thumps, not close enough to kill you, close enough to remind you it can. Men haven't slept in 2 days. American infantry crouch behind stone walls, helmets streaked white with dust. Sherman tanks idle nose forward on narrow roads, engines rumbling like restrained animals. And standing just off the road, his ivory-handled pistols catching the early sun, Lieutenant General George S. Patton, Jr. watches the island breathe. He doesn't look tired. He looks impatient. You can almost feel it radiating off him, the tension of a man forced to move slower than his instincts allow. The invasion has succeeded, technically. The beaches are secured. The foothold is firm. But Patton isn't looking at the beach. He's looking west. Inside Allied headquarters, several miles away, the mood is very different. Maps are spread across tables. Coffee cups shake slightly with every distant explosion. British officers, veterans of North Africa, speak calmly, deliberately. This is how campaigns are supposed to unfold. Slow advances. Secured flanks. Measured pressure. Sicily, they believe, will be a methodical operation. The German and Italian forces will fall back step by step. Roads will clog. Supply lines will stretch. Progress will come in miles per day, not dozens. When Patton talks about speed, real speed, eyebrows rise. Some smiles appear. A few quiet chuckles. Because to them, the American general looks like exactly what he sounds like. Loud, theatrical, reckless. A cavalryman playing at modern war. One British staff officer mutters that Patton wants to race across Sicily like it's Arizona. Another jokes that his tanks will outrun their own fuel trucks. No one says it directly to Patton's face. But he knows. He always knows. Patton has spent his entire career being underestimated by men who mistake caution for intelligence. He studied war not as paperwork, but as motion, as momentum. To him, hesitation is death stretched over time. And Sicily, he believes, is about to offer something rare. An opening. The British Eighth Army, under General Bernard Montgomery, has been given priority. They are to drive north and east toward Messina, squeezing Axis forces against the sea. Patton's U.S. Seventh Army is meant to protect the flank. Protect. Support. Hold. Not lead. Patton listens to the orders. He nods, he salutes. Then he goes back to his command post and studies the roads. Sicily's western coast curves like a blade toward Palermo, the island's major port, political center, and logistical prize. The terrain is rough, yes, mountainous, narrow passes, ancient towns perched like watchtowers. But the roads exist. And more importantly, the enemy isn't ready. Italian units are collapsing faster than intelligence predicted. German formations are pulling back east, focused on Montgomery. Patrol reports speak of empty villages, abandoned checkpoints, artillery left behind because there was no time to tow it. This isn't a defensive line. It's a vacuum. Patton stands over the map late into the night, finger tracing the coast. You can imagine the silence in the tent, broken only by generators humming and distant gunfire echoing through hills older than Rome itself. Speed, he thinks, is not recklessness. Speed is shock. At first light, he gives the order. Armor forward. Not cautiously. Not in stages. Forward. Sherman tanks lurch into motion, tracks grinding stone into powder. Trucks follow nose to tail. Infantry cling to sides, rifles bouncing against steel. Columns stretch for miles, rolling through villages whose residents watch from doorways in stunned disbelief. This is not how armies usually move. This is not how Allied armies move. By the second day, Patton's advance has already exceeded the pace predicted for an entire week. Reports reach Allied headquarters. Then more. And more. At first they assume exaggeration. Overeager American signals officers, confused coordinates, poor map references. But the pins on the map keep sliding west. British liaison officers exchange glances. He can't sustain that, one says. He'll outrun his supply, says another. He'll be forced to halt. But Patton doesn't halt. He pushes. When bridges are blown, engineers throw temporary spans across ravines in hours, not days. When roads clog with refugees and livestock, military police shove traffic aside and keep the columns moving. When fuel runs low, Patton orders every available truck, even staff vehicles, stripped of gasoline. Movement above comfort. Momentum above perfection. Inside his command vehicle, Patton stands braced against the jolting terrain, binoculars pressed to his eyes. Dusk coats his uniform. His voice is sharp, relentless. Faster. Keep them moving. Don't let the enemy breathe. British observers embedded with the Americans begin to send quieter messages back to their superiors. Not jokes now. Questions. How far west are they? Confirm position. Repeat coordinates. And then comes the moment no one expected. A reconnaissance plane circles over Palermo's outskirts. Below, the city lies tense and confused. Italian troops are disorganized. German units are already withdrawing. Civilians wave white cloth from balconies. And rising above the harbor, an American flag. Not scheduled. Not planned. Not believed possible. Word races back through Allied command channels. Patton's columns have reached the objective. Days early. In rooms where laughter once lingered, silence settles instead. Because this wasn't luck. This was tempo. And as officers begin to understand what has just happened, another realization forms, colder, heavier. If Patton can move this fast when he's not supposed to be leading, what will happen when he's finally unleashed? The message arrives just after midday. It's brief, precise, almost casual. Palermo secured, resistance minimal, port intact. For several seconds, no one speaks. Inside the Allied command tent, the canvas walls ripple in the Sicilian heat. A map lies open on the central table, its neat lines and penciled timetables now hopelessly out of date. Pins meant to move inches over days have leapt halfway across the island. A British major clears his throat. That's not possible. But it is. And everyone in the room knows it. Only a week earlier, Palermo hadn't even been discussed as an immediate objective. The city was something to be dealt with later, after Montgomery's push, after consolidation, after the front stabilized. Instead, Patton has taken it while the plan was still being debated. What unsettles the staff isn't just the speed. It's the implication. Because if one American army can cross hostile territory this quickly, then the war, at least this kind of war, is no longer being fought at the tempo they understand. British doctrine prizes control, balance, deliberate pressure. Patton has just proven something dangerous. That chaos, properly directed, can be faster. News spreads through the ranks. Among American troops, the capture of Palermo feels unreal, like they've outrun the war itself. Soldiers wander streets expecting resistance that never comes. Italian officers surrender in groups, offering pistols with expressions closer to relief than defeat. Civilians line the roads, cautious at first, then bold. Children chase trucks. Old men remove their caps. Women press water into soldiers' hands. The port is seized nearly intact. Warehouses full. Fuel untouched. For a logistics officer, it's a dream bordering on fantasy. For Patton, it's confirmation. He stands near the harbor, boots coated with grime, looking out at the Mediterranean. The sea glitters innocently, as if unaware that an entire campaign has just shifted. He doesn't celebrate. He's already thinking forward. Because now comes the dangerous part. Success attracts attention, and attention brings friction. Messages begin arriving from higher command, polite at first, then firmer. Questions about boundaries, about coordination, about whether Patton has exceeded his mandate. He reads them with narrowed eyes. Technically he has. But war, he believes, does not reward technical obedience. It rewards results. Still, the political tension grows. General Bernard Montgomery is not amused. His Eighth Army is grinding forward against stiffening German resistance. Progress is slow, costly. Every village requires artillery preparation. Every ridge bleeds men. And now headlines, unofficial ones, whispered through mess tents and radio chatter, are talking about Patton. The loud American. The fast one. The general who took Palermo, while others were still advancing mile by mile. The rivalry, once subtle, sharpens. Allied unity holds on paper, but beneath it pride stirs. At a conference days later, British and American officers sit stiff-backed across long tables. Cigarette smoke curls upward, thick with things unsaid. Maps are reviewed. Timelines adjusted. And then quietly, the conversation turns. What if, someone asks carefully, we allow 7th Army greater freedom of maneuver? No one laughs this time. Because they've seen what happens when Patton is allowed to move. Patton listens without expression. He says little. When he does speak, his words are controlled, almost restrained, which for him is remarkable. But behind the calm, his mind is racing. Because Palermo wasn't the prize. It was the proof. Proof that the enemy is brittle. Proof that speed paralyzes decision-making. Proof that German commanders cannot respond if you don't give them time to think. And Patton intends to exploit that truth. Orders come down. The new objective lies east. Toward Messina. Toward the trap. German forces, under General Hans Valentin Hube, are now trying to withdraw across the narrow northeastern tip of Sicily. If they succeed, thousands of experienced troops will escape to mainland Italy. If they fail, Sicily ends here. Patton knows the race has begun. Not just against the Germans. Against Montgomery. Against geography. Against time itself. His columns turn eastward, engines roaring back to life. Once again, dust rises in long plumes visible for miles. But this time, something has changed. British liaison officers no longer smirk when they watch the Shermans roll past. They watch silently, measuring, wondering, because deep down they sense it now. This is not reckless speed. This is a new kind of warfare. And as Patton's army accelerates toward Messina, one question hangs unspoken in every Allied command post on the island. Can anyone move fast enough to stop him, including the enemy? The eastern road is barely wide enough for 2 trucks to pass. On one side, mountains rise sharply, jagged limestone cliffs scarred by centuries of wind and war. On the other, the Mediterranean drops away in blue silence, broken only by the crash of waves far below. This is the road to Messina. And now it has become a racetrack. Patton's columns push forward in relentless succession. Tanks first, half-tracks next, then the long spine of trucks carrying ammunition, fuel, engineers, medics, the fragile bloodstream of an army moving far faster than it was ever designed to. You can feel the tension in the men, riding those vehicles. They know this is different. There is no pause to dig in, no long night of preparation. Positions are taken in motion. Orders are shouted over engines still running. Units leapfrog forward, bypassing resistance instead of grinding it down. German rear guards appear suddenly. A burst of machine gun fire from a hillside. A single anti-tank gun firing once before being overrun or abandoned. The enemy isn't trying to hold ground anymore. They're buying time. And time is exactly what Patton refuses to give. At night, headlights are hooded, reduced to thin slits of light. Drivers follow the faint glow of the truck ahead, hands numb from gripping steering wheels too long. When one vehicle breaks down, it's pushed aside without ceremony. The column does not stop for one machine. It cannot. Somewhere ahead, German engineers are blowing bridges behind them, collapsing spans into ravines just hours before the Americans arrive. Each explosion sends black smoke spiraling into the sky, a warning and a challenge. Patton answers with urgency. Combat engineers move like surgeons under fire, assembling Bailey bridges while bullets snap overhead. Infantry forms tight perimeters. Tanks idle inches from the gap, waiting. The moment steel locks into place, engines surge forward again. Always forward. British observers embedded with the 7th Army begin sending reports that sound almost incredulous. Advance continuing at extreme pace. Enemy resistance fragmented. Morale exceptionally high. Behind the formal language lies something else. Meanwhile, German commanders struggle to understand what's happening. Their doctrine expects pauses, regrouping, consolidation. Instead, Patton's army behaves like a force unbound by normal rules, striking here, bypassing there, appearing in villages before German units believe Americans could possibly arrive. Orders arrive too late. Positions are occupied only to find the Americans already past them. At one coastal town, German troops prepare an ambush at dawn. By dawn, the Americans have already come and gone. Hube realizes the danger. If Patton reaches Messina before the evacuation is complete, entire German divisions could be trapped against the sea. Thousands of veterans lost not to defeat, but to speed. The response is immediate. Every available rearguard unit is thrown into the fight. Fallschirmjäger paratroopers, elite, hardened, dig into mountain passes. Artillery is positioned to cover narrow choke points. The retreat must be shielded at all costs. For the first time, Patton's advance begins to feel resistance with weight behind it. At towns like Troina and San Fratolo, the fighting turns brutal. Shells echo through stone streets. Buildings collapse inward. The smell of cordite mixes with olive groves and smoke. Progress slows, not to a crawl, but enough to feel dangerous. Men fall. Officers argue over routes. Radio traffic thickens with urgency. And still Patton pushes. He visits the front constantly, helmet on, pistols strapped, standing where generals are not supposed to stand. His presence electrifies some and terrifies others. When a regimental commander suggests waiting for artillery, Patton cuts him off. Attack now, he snaps. The enemy's leaving, don't help him. The message is unmistakable. Every hour matters. But there is a shadow hanging over the race. To the south and east, Montgomery is advancing too, slower, heavier, grinding his way forward. His route is shorter. If the British reach Messina first, Patton's achievement will fade into a footnote. If Patton arrives first, it will be undeniable. The men feel it. They talk about it in low voices on trucks and in foxholes. We're racing the British, someone says. No, another replies, we're racing history. As the days blur together, exhaustion sets in, faces hollow, eyes red, yet the columns keep moving. Because somewhere ahead, The last exit from Sicily is narrowing, and every mile gained might mean thousands of enemy soldiers lost to the sea. Then comes the report. German evacuation craft have begun moving across the Strait of Messina. The window is closing. Patton studies the map in silence. Then he points. Here, he says, we cut them here. But the route he indicates is the most dangerous yet, a narrow coastal corridor under constant enemy observation. A gamble. And if it fails, his army could be pinned, exposed, and humiliated. But if it works, the war will remember who arrived first. The coastal road bends sharply near San Fratolo. To the right, the sea stretches calm and indifferent. To the left, steep ridgelines rise like walls, perfect ground for ambush. German paratroopers already occupy the heights. They can see everything. Every truck, every tank, every plume of dust marking the American advance. As Patton's lead elements approach, artillery fire crashes down with sudden violence. Shells burst against the road, spraying stone and shrapnel. A Sherman takes a direct hit, flames roaring skyward as its crew scrambles free. For the first time since Palermo, the advance halts. Only briefly, because stopping here would be fatal. German guns are ranged in. The longer the Americans sit, the deadlier the fire becomes. Officers shout over the chaos, radios crackle with overlapping commands. You can almost feel the panic trying to rise. Patton arrives within hours. He steps out of his vehicle as shells fall nearby, utterly unconcerned with the danger. Dust coats his helmet. His face is rigid with fury, not fear. This is what he despises. Stagnation. He listens to reports, jaw clenched. The coastal route is murderous. The mountain passes are worse. The Germans are trading ground for time exactly as he feared. Then Patton makes a decision that shocks his own staff. He orders an amphibious landing behind enemy lines. Not a large one. Not a full invasion. A sudden punch. American infantry will load onto landing craft and strike the German rear near Brolo, cutting the road and forcing the defenders to withdraw. It's risky. The seas are unpredictable. Coordination is thin. The landing force could be isolated and destroyed. But Patton understands something others don't. German forces here aren't trying to win. They're trying to delay. Break the delay, and the entire line collapses. The landing goes in at night. Waves slap against the hulls as soldiers grip rifles, knees braced, faces pale under red-filtered lamps. There's no grand speech, no ceremony. Only motion. When the ramps drop, the Americans surge forward into darkness. Confused firefights erupt among olive groves and stone farmhouses. German units, suddenly attacked from the rear, scramble to reorient. By dawn, the pressure eases. The road opens. Once again, Patton's columns surge forward. But time has slipped away. Across the narrow strait, German ferries and barges churn constantly, carrying men, vehicles, artillery, even tanks to mainland Italy under cover of darkness and smoke. Patton knows the truth now. He will not trap the enemy completely, but he can still win the race. The final push begins. Vehicles roar eastward without pause. Men sleep sitting up. Drivers swap seats while rolling. Engineers patch craters with rubble and prayer. And then on August 17, 1943, early morning, the lead elements of the U.S. 7th Army crest the final rise. Below them lies Messina. The city is battered. The port smolders. German demolitions echo sporadically as the last evacuation craft pull away. And there it is. The finish line. American troops enter the city streets cautiously, weapons raised, hearts pounding. Resistance is minimal. The enemy is gone, slipped across the water hours earlier. At 10:00 a.m., The Stars and Stripes rises over Messina. Minutes later, British troops enter from the south. They are close, very close, but not first. Word spreads rapidly through Allied channels. Patton has beaten Montgomery to Messina. Not by weeks, not by days, by hours. In headquarters across Sicily, officers absorb the news quietly. There are no jokes now, no smiles, only calculation. Because something fundamental has shifted. This was supposed to be a supporting army, a secondary role. Instead, it has just executed one of the fastest operational advances of the entire Mediterranean War. Not through superior numbers, not through overwhelming firepower, but through tempo, speed weaponized. That evening, Patton walks the streets of Messina alone. Rubble crunches beneath his boots. The sea glows faintly in moonlight, the same water that carried the enemy away. He is not smiling. He is thinking, because he knows something others are just beginning to realize. The next phase of the war in France, in Germany, will not be decided by who has more men. It will be decided by who moves faster than the enemy can think. And now everyone knows exactly who that man is. The celebrations are muted. There are no parades in Messina, no speeches echoing through the streets, only exhausted men slumped against walls, helmets beside them, eyes hollow with relief. The campaign is over. Sicily has fallen. But inside Allied command, the real battle is only beginning. Maps are being redrawn. Not because the war has moved on, but because assumptions have collapsed. British officers study the campaign reports late into the night. Casualty figures, march rates, engineering timelines, fuel consumption. The numbers don't align with doctrine. They shouldn't be possible. Patton's 7th Army has advanced at a pace more common to cavalry raids than modern mechanized warfare. Units moved before rear areas were secured. Decisions were made without full intelligence. Risks were accepted deliberately. And yet it worked. Not cleanly, not perfectly, but decisively. One senior British planner reportedly remarks, quietly, "If the Germans had moved like this in 1940, we would never have escaped Dunkirk." It isn't admiration yet, but it is respect. Across the Allied leadership, a subtle realization takes hold. The enemy is not just Germany. It is time. German commanders survive by slowing opponents, forcing pauses, counterattacks, reassessments. Every delay gives them space to recover, to reorganize, to dig in again. Patton denied them that space. And in doing so, he revealed a new possibility. Eisenhower reads the Sicily reports carefully. He notes the friction, the arguments, the political tension, the complaints. But he also sees the outcome. Objectives seized early, ports intact, enemy cohesion shattered. He does not say it aloud yet. But a seed is planted. When the invasion of France comes, speed will matter. Elsewhere, reactions are more complicated. Montgomery, outwardly composed, privately furious at being beaten to Messina. The rivalry hardens. Pride has been bruised. But even he cannot deny the result. The Americans have proven they can maneuver at scale. Not just fight, maneuver. Among the troops, Patton's legend spreads faster than any official communique. He never stops, soldiers say. He doesn't let the war slow down. To many, he becomes more than a general. He becomes momentum personified. Yet Patton himself is restless. He understands the truth others don't see yet. Sicily was not the main event. It was rehearsal. The terrain was harsh, yes, but limited. The enemy was constrained by evacuation. The scale was manageable. France will be different. There will be no narrow island, no sea to trap retreating forces. only open country and German armies waiting. Patton begins preparing long before he is asked. He drills staff relentlessly, demands faster planning cycles, pushes logistics officers to think in terms of movement, not stockpiles. An army, he tells them, does not win by standing still with full warehouses. It wins by advancing with just enough. Some consider him dangerous, others visionary. But no one laughs anymore, because the men who once mocked his speed now know what it feels like to watch an army outrun expectations and make them irrelevant. Months later, when Allied planners debate how to exploit a breakout in Normandy, someone will mention Sicily. When German lines collapse near St. Lo, someone will remember Palermo. And when Patton's Third Army erupts across France in the summer of 1944, racing hundreds of miles in weeks, no one will be surprised. They will only nod, because they've seen it before. It began on a dusty island in the Mediterranean, under a merciless sun, when British officers laughed at an American general who refused to slow down, and then watched his columns reach the objective first.